We're back at you at Gloves Off. Today we have National Director of USA Savate, Partrick Gavin, and Gavin's out of Chicago, and we're going to be talking about the future of Savate here in the States and in other countries, especially with dancers Savate, and what Savate has and its troubles it's had here in the United States in the past 30 years, or 25, yeah, around 30 years now. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are we doing today?
Hot, 115 degrees in Laredo and 10% humidity. This is not fair.
Now, Chicago, every time I go visit Chicago in May, it's snowing, and you get out of the airport and it's like 10 below and stuff like that, and it's just crazy weather. But I remember one time I went over there and I just visited Los Angeles, and I flew from Los Angeles to Chicago to do a seminar with you all, and it was in the middle of April, and in Los Angeles I left the airport in shorts, and when I get out of Chicago here, I had no jacket, nothing. It was below. I had to buy a jacket inside the airport, a windbreaker, and I remember we stopped at the first I can't remember if it was Walmart or something, just to buy a jacket and get everything warm, because I left California with shorts on and ended up getting over there and everybody looked like an Eskimo.
There's no such thing as bad weather, just bad choices in clothing, that's all.
Yeah, true. Folks out there, Partrick has been involved in Savate, I would say in the past, maybe 25 years, easy. He was U.S. champion of USA Savate twice. He's the current national director. He fought in several international bouts that we had with USA Savate, the old border rumbles that we used to have here in Laredo. An excellent instructor. He's reached the Aide-Moniteur rank of Dancer Savate, which is a rarity with many folks. It takes a long time to attain. And he has a wonderful club in Chicago, and he's been working with it ever since. And he has a group of ladies over there. They're phenomenal, because Savate in France is a different story, but in the United States, women really do not go to Savate because they usually look at it as a rough man sport, a ruffian sport, and stuff like that, correct?
Very much so. But Savate in France is more of a sport and less of a martial art. Whereas what I teach, Danse de Rue Savate, that is a martial art. It has not just a sporting aspect, it has a striking aspect, grappling aspect, a weapons aspect. It's, I'd say it's a family martial art. So you can teach it to kids, you can teach it to young people, you can teach it to hardcore competitive guys, you can teach it to middle-aged and older people. There's something in it for everyone.
You're absolutely correct. Savate in France, of course, is a national sport. When I lived over there, I was the first non-French to teach the art to the day in France. And women would come in there because it was used as a fitness. It was great to build fitness and to build a good physique and to learn an excellent self-defense. Savate was more appealing to women than boxe française was at one particular time, but yet you've always had women involved in both of those disciplines ever since the beginning. I mean, there's pictures of Matt Charlemont, which is a boxe française lineage, teaching his daughters, teaching his nieces, teaching the young girls of Paris.
Some of those 19th century photos are kind of they're kind of funny if you look at them through the lens of 21st century, because it was Victorian times, even though it was France. It was the Victorian era, very socially conservative, and the women who were working in those schools, those salles, training halls, were wearing almost like a dress and skirt. They almost look like a long Catholic schoolgirl's outfit, and they're trying to do essentially a kickboxing style in that. And then you look today in like a Billy Blanks type of Taibo type class, and there's maybe 2 ounces of spandex per woman. Very very different times.
Oh, of course, and we've had some great women competitors, you know, in Sabat. You had Annis Pecklin, which is one of the only women professors still teaching. You have Nancy Joseph, which was an excellent champion, which is now the women's director in France. So out of the professors,
Virginie Lescure, if she's still around.
You have many. You had a great sister of mine, you know, Sandrine out of INSEP, and you had which were great competitors. You had Claude Valadir's daughter, who was an excellent sabateuse, you know, and you had Nancy Delanotte, which is an excellent. She's still teaching now, and I think she's teaching now in Italy. So it's produced great women. Another professor, and she was my sister because we were both formed under Robert Patorel. Her name is Denny Roca, who ended up fighting for a championship against Nancy Long, and I think
Kathy Long.
Kathy Long, yeah. Kathy Long back in '88, you know.
And I believe that was that set a record. There was something like Kathy Long, and that their fight was the main event, and there was something like 50,000 people for a women's championship where the women were the main event. That was record setting.
No, it's phenomenal. But and now you see a lot of women now competing in boxing, which 20 years ago you didn't see that many women compete in boxing. Remember when I used to have the boxing club very much alive and kicking. Right. We'll have 2-3 girls that were with us training, but for them to get fights, it was every 6 months they might get one. Yeah. And let me plug this in for here, Laredo. We have today in Laredo, we have Mandy Fuentes going up for a title bout. So let's praise Mandy. Good luck, Mandy. We're all rooting for you, and give it hell, okay? And go in there and do your best. Good luck. But going back here, you know that women in the combative sports, they've always been involved.
Absolutely.
They've always been involved for many reasons. Reasons for self-defense, number one. But the combative sports entity has changed from the martial arts. You know, now you see many training in MMA. You see them fighting in MMA. But it's more cultural, you know.
It is. If women are encouraged to participate in sports, particularly combat sports, which are more individualistic than team sports, they got to have the kind of parents and they have to be raised in the right kind of household where they're encouraged to be pushed out and pushed forward. Things have changed a lot in the advent of Title IX, which has brought a lot more sporting opportunities to girls in both grade schools, high schools, colleges, and also the USA Boxing in 1993 opening up amateur boxing to women. The Chicago Golden Gloves in 1994, I remember that because there was one or two women from my club at the time, which was a Chicago Park District club called Hamlin Park, were the first women's amateur boxing bout in the United States. Okay, we sanctioned that here in the U.S. before even the British did. The 1996 Olympics were the first Olympics to have women competitors, and it has flourished ever since. Prior to that, you had the likes of, say, Christy Martin, who was a pioneer, but there was no opportunity for her to really learn her trade, to get an amateur pedigree. I come from an old school kind of boxing background where, coaches wouldn't even entertain the thought of you turning pro at like Chicago Park District gyms or Windy City Gym back in the day, unless you had, 150 to 300 amateur fights, and you started around the time you were 10 or 12, and you had to be no older than maybe 16 to take somebody as a beginner in their 20s and turn them pro. It was unheard of. You just didn't do it. There was just not enough time to teach basic amateur boxing and then turn somebody pro, which is an entirely different game.
You're absolutely correct. And now in today's world, you see guys that have never competed amateur fight competing in pro.
It's suicide.
And then you see guys that have 3 amateur fights or 4 amateur fights getting thrown in right away because their coaches want the money, and that's stupidity. And egos hurt boxers. Okay,
ego
it's not the ego of the
time.
boxer; it's the ego of the coach, of the manager,
Absolutely.
that think that person there is the next champ.
Mm-hmm.
He might have a great jab. He might hit the bag right, but guess what? He's not ready. You have to build him up. You have to train him. He has to be seasoned, and those are the horrors in today's world,
Mm-hmm.
and it happens all over the place. I had a young lad that was with us and ended up winning the U.S. championship of Savate, and he became champion of Savate, and I took him to the Golden Gloves, and he won the Golden Gloves. The next month, his father and his older brother had him with another coach down the street, and guess what? He was fighting pro in Corpus Christi. They broke his ribs, and they tore his rotator cuff. They come with me about 5 months later, and they said, can he go amateur with you again? I go, no, he's already pro. He's already tainted. And they burned the kid. And the kid now, he has a messed up shoulder. And
I've seen coaches, in different parts of the country, but particularly in Chicago, where I have the most experience, that are known for making shells out of their boxers, out of their fighters, inside of a year. Because you go and you train in their gyms, and you step into the ring, and it's like a gladiator pit. Every punch is a hand grenade. Okay, they're going to trash each other. They're sparring with Zeppels or Cleto Reyes gloves that do nothing but bust people up in the face, and they break hands. Okay,
No,
so after about a year of this kind of boxing, the kid is shot.
And that right there is safety. And USA Boxing does an excellent job in governing safety. And USA Savate does the same thing. And a lot of folks here, that's one of the deterrences with the others that say they do Savate here in the States, because it's USA Savate's for everybody. And anybody can join. It's a 501c3, it's an amateur organization. And it's apart from Dance Through Savate. It's a sporting entity, which anybody, we used to have boxers. We had a great team from Fort Hood before the war started. And we had great saboteurs come out of there. And what I'm saying is, folks do not want to follow rules and regulations when it comes to safety. Take care of your kid that's training. And we see that with the rules of Lacan. We see that with the rules of Savate, where in Savate you wear shoes. It's a safety shoe. You have to wear certain sanctioned equipment in there.
Absolutely.
No, they want to wear something else because they bought it from the internet and blah blah blah. And it just matters, I remember when I was the president of USA Savate back in 2001 to 2003, I was going different states, talking to the boxing commissioners, talking to the athletic departments, talking to the state licensing boards about how to introduce Savate. And I remember talking with the boxing commissioner, or the head of the athletic department of California. His name was Robert Lynch. And I went to Sacramento, spent plenty of time over there. And we said, we have coaches. And he goes, well, we follow the same similarities of USA Boxing. We have regional directors, and you have to have officials and that have taken classes. You have to have coaches that are taking classes. You have to have people that are registered. First question was, is there any men and women fights? No, there's not men and women fights. You all fight and compete in the ring? Yes, we compete in the ring. We have equipment that is sanctioned. We have insurances. And he says, well, we'll look it over. Okay. 2 months later, I get a call, and he says, are these individuals sanctioned with you all? And I said, no, they're not sanctioned with you all. Do you know them? And I go, I've heard of some of them. And I go, well, they just had a competition, and a young man suffered a terrible prize. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, he was weighing 150 something or other, fighting a heavyweight, off records of off weight divisions. They did not have a ring. They were fighting inside the back of a school. The kid stumbled over and ended up hitting his head in a bench or something to that effect. And guess what? Savate is now not particularly done in California as a sport. People might say they do competition savate in California, but it's not regulated. It's not sanctioned by the licensing board of California. It's not accepted. And those incidents hurt the sports. You know, Texas is very much alive and kicking over its safety.
Texas is the most regular, you know, for a southern state where, you know, people, a red southern state, probably the reddest southern state where people really don't like a lot of over-regulation. Texas regulates the holy living crap out of amateur sports because I think it's a value judgment. Who is participating mostly in amateur sports? Children.
And you have to have safety, and folks do not want to follow those safety guidelines. And believe me, I'd rather kick out a parent and kick out a kid from a program if they're not going to be following safety rules. And to me,
absolutely,
I'm not going to endanger anybody that's in there, and that's by far, you know. Now the question is we had to start having background checks with some of our coaches, and some people didn't want to do it. Well, fine. If you don't want to have your background check, well, then you're not going to be affiliated. Plain and simple, you know.
You're teaching children. You can't have pedos and chomos and, you know, ex-cons around children. That's just not compatible with, like, conservative Texan values or anybody's values anywhere.
You know, and those are not rules that we set. Those are rules that are told to us that we have to follow, and we follow.
Absolutely.
Plain and simple. Now, that's one portion of what savate really is. You know, you have the martial element of it. And within the martial element of dance through savate, it's grown. It's grown in Chicago. You've held the fort over there. We have the groups up in Arizona now trying to pick back up in steam. The main deterrent that we had in the last 10 years was we lost a full generation gap. And it was done because of the wars that we had.
Yeah.
And wars have always hindered the growth of savate. In World War II, let me put it to you this way, before World War I, there were 3 million French that did savate, men and women. After World War I, there were not that many. Then it picked up steam again in before World War II, where you had the two different factions, which was savate and boxe française. And after World War II, you only had 33 instructors left, or professors left, and they all got together. Now, I'm not talking about instructors of both fields of savate, and they kind of came together and they kind of started the two different associations, because many out there don't understand that while they claim boxe française is a ring and savate is for the street, no, there were two totally different martial arts that had ring sports and martial self-defense statuses. Let me plug this out there because Sergio's here telling me. The number, if you guys want to call for any questions, is 956-441-1040. I repeat that again, 956-441-1040.
One of the things you mentioned about the gloves and the shoes in savate, the actual word savate means in Old French, now we're talking the French of like maybe the 1700s, it means old shoe or old boot. Now, there's something, when it comes to putting on a boxing glove, no problem. But putting on a shoe and kicking somebody, everybody loses their minds. No, the paradox about boxing gloves and a savate boot, which is used, primarily for kicking, is that a boxing glove is not there to protect the brain cells of the boxers. It's actually there to protect the hands and wrists of the boxers, which is 28 bones in the hands, maybe double that in ligament connections, tendons. That's what it's for. That's what it's for. Boxing bouts would be really, really short without gloves. One guy would dip his chin, hit another guy in the top of the head, get a fracture in 2 or 3 places, fight over. And that's how it used to be back in the day. A lot of these guys would retire because of their hand injuries. But the boot, the shoe, is actually to protect the foot. There's so much more you can do in a kicking sport with the shoe on. And oddly enough, having this boot on, which is like essentially a boxing or wrestling shoe, it's not perforating organs. It's not causing internal bleeding. They don't seem to be cracking ribs left and right and breaking legs. That's not happening. But what is happening is that there's a hell of a lot less foot injuries in France, in Belgium, in Britain, in Spain, Portugal, Italy, any place they do savate, they're not having foot injuries. Whereas here, karate, taekwondo, kickboxing, the barefoot sports, it's all over the place. There is a great argument to be made for safety when you're doing a sport like savate. Okay? I hope people would change their minds about that. That's one of the functions of USA Savate, to not just teach the sport, spread the sport, but to kind of change people's perceptions about what a ring sport can be. It can be civilized. You can have various levels of competition, from the full contact right down to people who just train in it recreationally or do it on a point basis. That is light contact matches. We call it assaut, or light contact fighting. Whereas you can have people of heavyweights and people of lightweights together, because the contact is only touch. You don't have that option in boxing. You're either in a competition, you're going out there and throwing hand grenades, or you're not. Okay, but in savate we have a kind of a range of options that you don't have in other sports, and I think that's one of the finer points of it, along with wearing the shoes that nobody does. Savate is the only ring sport that wears and encourages and makes mandatory a shoe. If you're not wearing the shoes, you're not doing savate. You're doing something, but it's not savate.
No, and you're absolutely correct, because we travel around, not only around the country, we travel overseas and teach many different savate clubs or folks that are interested in savate, and usually it's other martial artists that have heard about savate, because savate's always been around as a martial art that's been known, but it's rarely seen. It's a rarity, okay? And you see that in several countries, and the folks are teaching without shoes, and they're calling it savate. Well, it's number one, savate means shoe, zapato. That's what it means in Old French, in the Old French language. And it's the only actual martial art that's out there that kicks and punches, that gives reference to the shoe, okay, as a kicking way. Karate means the way of the hand, and Kempo means the law of the fist, even though they kick, but they're giving references for somebody else, Taekwondo means something totally different.
Foot fist way.
So and all of a sudden they're saying that it's a kicking art. You want a kicking art, you have savate, you have other arts, but if you like to, what people call now in the MMA lingo, stand-up, it's an excellent additive to your fight game if you want to use that. Now, what I've seen in both realms, because I came in at a time where you had savate schools and you had boxe française schools. Right now in France, you just have savate boxe française schools, which is just a sport. So I grew up at a time where you had both distinctive styles still present, and apart from their concurrent and appendage disciplines. And so there was a kind of a war going on between the clubs. So if you came from a savate club and you went to a boxe française club, and they knew you were, guess what's going to happen? There was a little war that went on in France for at least 20 years, and this goes back to the 1900s, but it actually started in 1978. The modern, little beef that they had, and this is a historic bout where both associations came together to make a national sport of France. Both claim to be French. Savate and boxe française both claim to have its origins back into the mid 1700s and 1800s, and both claim to be the spirit of the Fighting Frenchmen. And so they formed a new association to govern both as a one sport, regardless of the disciplines. Kind of similar to what happened to Taekwondo and the Koreans.
Right.
All the Koreans, martial artists, martial styles got together to compete in one national sport, and that national sport is Taekwondo.
Right. Now the unified, or Kwan as they call it, there are multiple Kwans of Korean martial arts. Now the unified Kwan is the Kuki Kwan in Seoul, and it's kind of like the Harvard University of Korean martial arts.
Correct.
They got together. They did it to basically for the good of the arts and to preserve them.
Yeah, and the same thing kind of happened in France in 1978. So they formed the International Federation of Boxe Française Savate, and at the same time, they formed the French Federation of Boxe Française Savate in associated disciplines. It all came together at the same time, but there were two fights. One coming in from Savate, his name was Emmanuel Essesima, and the other one that came from Boxe Française, which his name was Patrick Gavin. And both fought together. And this was told not only to me by Emmanuel himself, and as well as Auguste himself, but also by my brother, my teacher, my trainer, Richard Sela, that they were signing off the diploma of championship, and they had the name on top, and they were spelling it Patrick, and they were going to spell A-G, and all of a sudden it scratched out. Why? Because Emmanuel Essesima gave him an uppercut with a kick to the face that fell Patrick Auguste. Okay, so that started a war between the Boxe Française schools and the Savate schools. And it continued on inside the rings, and you had beautiful fights between that. And folks can go into YouTube and see, between the Savate competitors, the Savate schools and Boxe Française schools. You had Dominique Daclouis from Savate competing against André Panza. Great fighters, both of them. Great professors. And Dominic wins. And then you had others that went in there. You had Sylvain Postal that came out of Boxe Française against Drucos that also came out, from the Savate realm. Those are fights that you see that type of element going up there. And all of a sudden those stylistic gyms are no longer in France. Now everybody's it's a formula now. It's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Everybody does the same thing. Well, it's fine. It's fine.
There's an argument for standardizing a curriculum, and I get that, but such that somebody from one part of the country who's being tested for a certain thing on a certain day is receiving the exact same test as somebody on the other part of the country who has studied the same curriculum. Okay, that's fine. Okay, there's a great argument for standardization, but then you learn things as a fighter, you learn things as a coach. So maybe you add a little extra to it. Well, that's why you hire a trainer. That's why you hire a coach, and why you don't just learn off of YouTube or videos or something like that. That's what you need, the individual stylists, because as many boxing sports writers have said, styles make fights. Okay, styles make fights. When you're doing martial arts, you're doing it basically for yourself and your own development. And I tell my students this, especially those who are considering going pro. I said, look, you do martial arts, you do it for yourself and your own development. You do this as an amateur, again, you're still doing it for yourself and your own development.
So true.
But you turn professional, understand, you stop being a martial artist first. You stop being an amateur competitor, absolutely, and there's no going back. Not only that, you are second a martial artist, but the first thing you are is an entertainer. You are a professional entertainer, and if you do not entertain these crowds, you're going to be out of a job.
You're absolutely correct, and that brings us back to one of your paisans, McGregor against Floyd. It's an excellent entertainment that's going on now.
Oh, it's very much. It's all about it's all about reputation and building it up. It's probably going to be much ado about nothing if it's going to be a boxing fight. Again, who's the master of boxing?
Mayweather.
Yeah, exactly. You're going. It's a master of boxing in a boxing fight against a guy who's very far from being a master of boxing. I think people are going to be disappointed, but it's getting a hell of a lot of hype, and people they're going to sell a lot of tickets, and they're going to make a lot of money off it. So again, they're entertainers. That's what they do.
That's the American way, that's the American way. But and that's talking about money. That's what worldwide international arena has suppressed savate. Savate, boxe française, it's amateur. There's no money exchange. So a lot of French fighters nowadays, well, probably from the 90s this way, because the first ones that turned pro, you have to go back and you have to see like Denny Roca. She turned pro on the kickboxing arena. Mm-hmm. Richard Sela was the first one that went to the kickboxing arena, and he became a world champion of kickboxing, and he beat Peter Cunningham
twice. Beat Peter Cunningham twice.
And those were phenomenal areas. They broke the ice. They went right through the ice barrier. Then you had folks like Francois Pinocchio who went into the Thai boxing arena and beat Ramon Decre. And that fight, you all can look it up. It's on YouTube. It's all over the place. And then you had Sebastian Farina doing the same thing. You had Camille Schwarev coming after that. You had these greats that all of a sudden that ice was broken, and they started going into the kickboxing arena, the full contact arena, the Thai boxing arena, and making money. You have a great Frank Massage going into boxing. Great. It's beautiful, and so a lot of the saboteurs over there saw that opportunity, saw the training of savate as the pinnacle of training in pugilism. They'll train it, they'll get a couple of national ranks, national titles, and off they went to make money into the other arts. So a lot of other pugilistic styles like kickboxing, Thai boxing, full contact, American boxing that they call in Europe, benefited from savate. Okay, there's no thank yous, but they benefited from savate. You see their techniques change. Why? Because they're all saboteurs, the majority. Okay, you see Thai boxing change with kicks. Why? Because saboteurs went into that realm.
Right. There's been, I think back in the 90s, there was two Frenchmen that were actually champions of Rajadamnern and Lumpini Stadium in Thailand, which basically makes you the Thai boxing champion. There's one shorter Frenchman who was just a really tough SOB. Pete Cunningham fought him. He just kept coming. He lost the fight to Cunningham, but he kept pressing forward with Cunningham, and Cunningham just was throwing everything but the kitchen sink at this guy, and couldn't stop him. Won the fight on points, but the guy was really, really tough, and he had a great savate. He was a Frenchman with a great savate pedigree, and he had, by that time he fought Cunningham, he had already been a Thai champion.
No, you're absolutely correct. And nothing. Pete Cunningham is an excellent individual.
Outstanding fighter.
He's a
Cunningham.
great fighter from the Americas, and he came under Benny the Jet Urquidez, which is another legend, out of California.
Benny the Jet speaks. I mean, his reputation speaks for itself.
And they're just phenomenal athletes. I remember when I was 12 years old, Benny the Jet was doing a seminar at Houston, and he had us all up there and kicking. And so those are elements of your martial art training that you remember, training with these champions. And it's interesting. It's like Rob Kaiman, one of the best Thai boxers that ever lived.
The Flying Dutchman.
And excellent. The size, he went over there and just overpowered every Thai boxer that was there. He's just phenomenal, But getting back to savate here in the States, we have many programs coming up. Our savate season starts September to July, so we run kind of a collegiate season. of Europe. And so by July 15th, we're supposed to finish everything, you know. So we're starting back in September. We have several programs locally going, here in Laredo going. We're trying to open up some clubs with some of the commissioners to try to see if maybe we can reach the kids and bring them back in. Number one, get them off the streets, teach them a discipline. So we're working to see how we're going to do that. So if folks are interested in placing your kids, give us a call, without a doubt. And there's some programs that we're going to have that if the child, and I always say this, if the child does not have the financial means, we're not going to say, don't come train with us. If your folks, the parents, do not have the actual financial means to take your child to a martial art class, bring them by. Give me a call, 956-401-4868. I promise you, we're not going to throw them out. But you have an excellent project coming up and trying to, for the next season, that's the first International Dancerous Savate tournament.
That's right. That's it's going to be a tournament of assault, which is the light contact form of savate boxe française. We're also going to be having the weapons contest. It's called Cane de Combat, or Combat Cane. It's cane fencing, basically. We do it with padded sticks. The French do it with hard sticks and hard armor, which, well, we'd have to suit each competitor up at about $300 to $500 per kit, which is economically unfeasible. But thanks to technology and from like a Century and soft sticks, we can have a padded stick contest where people can throw as hard as they want, and they're not going to go home with concussions and broken bones. We are also having a multi-day seminar to be concluded with an annual rank examination called a passage de grade, and that's going to be we're eyeing that for here in Laredo in about a year from now.
Yeah, it will be. We're looking towards the latter part of June for that, and we have several that are going to be coming in from out of overseas. We have Professor Richard Sila. We're trying to bring two more professors. One is Francois Pinacchio and Jean-Louis Lassen to come in and to help out. You know, because not only are we going to have workshops, we're going to have the tournament. It's going to be two different faces. There's different faces of Dancerous Savate that are going to be in there, and so it's going to be an interesting event, first of its kind. We've seen a lot of growth. We have folks in Belgium that do Dancerous Savate. We have in France, of course, do Dancerous Savate. We have a Mexico club that does USA Savate in Chihuahua. I mean Dancerous Savate. And we have a huge movement in Brazil with Dancerous Savate. And in fact, we're supposed to go in August, but it's been moved to December. We're going to Brazil to actually open the Brazilian Confederation of Dancerous Savate, which is phenomenal. And I know there's interests of some of the students that have moved to Canada. So let's see what's going to happen. I think it's going to be a wonderful event, especially for here in Laredo. And I look forward to it.
Me too. I can't wait.
You know, you have women that in your club that are phenomenal. Now,
I have one really good fencer who's really gonna be interested in this contest.
It's awesome to see. It's awesome to see. So it's going to be something to expect. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're going to be moving on. Again, I want to thank everybody for watching. Gloves off, putting a little bit of your time of the day to listen to two saboteurs talk about what they love and their passion, and how we try to touch others, especially the youth, into not going the wrong road, kind of staying on the right road. And I know Savate training did that to me. Okay, so we give it back, and that's something I promised my teachers. And anything further to say?
Just thank you for having me. I'm on board here today. It's always a good time coming to Laredo, and I look forward to coming back.
You know, as national director, he's witnessing exams that we're having tomorrow. And tomorrow will be passage de grade, means the passing of a grade, passage de grade. And we're at our 27th annual passage de grade here in Laredo, 27th annual. And next year will be the 28th annual. And Chicago just had its first in March. So it's growing. It's growing. So little by little. I want to thank you guys. Until next time, be safe. Stay safe.